close out this series on financial health, we hope this next conversation is helpful as you keep running your race in ministry.
Hello and welcome to this called video series, Healthy Pastors, where we're looking at 5 areas of our lives as pastors and ministers we should aim to be healthy in. My name's Steve, I'm part of the call team at the national office, and I'm joined with Don Headley from AG Financial. Don, it is so good to have you with us today.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate the invitation and glad to be a part of this.
Yeah. Before we jump in to this discussion, we could talk about a few different areas of our lives that we should be healthy in. We're looking at our spiritual health, our physical health, our mental and emotional health, relational health. Today, we're focusing on our financial health. Before we jump into that, why don't you give us a snapshot of who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. I was in banking for about 24 years and had the opportunity to come out to AG Financial and join the team out here. So in 2008, I came out and joined the team and totally enjoyed it. It's been a great experience. I have a couple different areas in AG Financial that I'm responsible for. The retirement plan falls under my umbrella, as well as plan giving, working with people with legacy giving, charitable giving, things like that. And also the client service falls under our group. So married, have 2 children and 4 grandchildren, and life just keeps getting better.
4 grandchildren. Yeah. How old are they?
My oldest 2 they're almost 3, and then I've got one that's about 1.5 years and one that's about 8 months. So We're at those early stages, but it's been a lot of fun, and I think it's just going to keep getting better all the time.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's very good.
Absolutely.
Why don't we talk about, when it comes to our finances, maybe some misconceptions around what it looks like to have financial health?
Sure. I think it's important to find the definition of financial health. I think it differs for everybody. I mean, everyone's financial health looks a little bit different. What works for someone may not necessarily work for someone else. We've seen people that, when we look at it from our lens, they look like they've got everything they want. They should be happy. They've got all the things in this world that we would think makes them happy, and they're not happy. And then we've seen others that, God's blessed them with maybe not as much as others, but man, are they happy, and they're enjoying life, and they feel like they're doing what God's called them to do. So I think when it comes to financial health, I think it's a matter of, in our hearts, where we feel like God has us to be. Like, it's, do I have to have this car or that house to be financially happy? I think if God puts in our heart that, hey, I'm content with this, and then I think that's important. So I think we may talk about it a little bit later, but it's not about your financial health. It's not about what somebody else has and how you compare with your health is about you and what you have.
Yeah. What would you say, Don, would be some tips for someone who's wanting to start saving or keep saving?
Well, I think I'd say when it comes to start saving, start now. There's never the right time where you go, well, I'm going to start savings when I'm, I got a little more income or a little less bills. You just have to start saving, and you have to do a little bit of time. Just be disciplined. Just start the habit, and as you do it, I think you'll find that you can always add a little bit at a time. Look for ways to put a little bit aside if maybe you have a unexpected funds come in, instead of just going and saying, I'm gonna, God must be giving me this to go buy something. Maybe you take a little bit of that and put in your savings. I think another key part of that is automating savings. Like, for instance, it's kind of funny, but way back in the day when I was at the bank back in Pennsylvania, we had what we call Christmas Club account. And I don't know that many banks offer that anymore, but it was just a way to encourage people to save money throughout the year, so that when they come to Christmas, there's money there to buy the Christmas gifts. And because oftentimes what happens without doing that is everybody goes, buys their Christmas gifts, and in January, the credit card bills come and like, oh, what did I just do? So anyway, the Christmas Club was one of those things you encourage people, just put a little bit of aside each month. And I actually still do that myself. I still have my own Christmas Club account, even in my own mind.
Is that stuff for you or for the grandkids?
Well, unfortunately, it's for the grandkids.
Yep.
That's probably what my wife would say too. So
Changed a little bit over the years.
it does. It definitely does.
What about, savings obviously would fall into line with like having a budget. Let's talk about budgets for a second. Maybe something for someone watching that doesn't have a budget, maybe isn't sure where to start when it comes to that. What advice would you have for that person?
Sure, and there's all kind of budget templates out there. You can go online and there's budget templates that are in an app, or there's budget templates that are on Excel spreadsheets. There's some people, when it comes to budget, they use the old envelope. They have an envelope for everything. And I think it's a matter of what works best. And I think you want to keep it simple. Because sometimes people are like, I want to do a budget, and it becomes so complicated that they just give up on it. And they're like, I'm not even going to worry about a budget. I can't do it, so I'm not going to do it. So I think you keep it simple. And when it comes to budgeting, the key you got to remember with budgeting, it's not so much the income, but it's the expenses that you have to really try to keep an eye on the expenses, because the income's going to stay pretty much the same. It's the expenses that can really wreck a budget if you're not careful. So again, I think if Dave Ramsey, obviously people have watched Dave Ramsey, and he's got so much material out there on budgeting and things like that. You can't go wrong with looking at something like that. But again, there's plenty of templates. Start with something that's simple and just be committed to say, okay, we're going to do a budget, even if you do it for a month, and say, let's try it for a month. Let's see what this looks like, and then just build on that.
Yeah. I love that. I think, start simple.
Yeah.
And just start now.
Absolutely.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
When it comes to our retirement, I know you spoke on it in one of the videos, but when it comes to our retirement, what are a few things that we should consider as pastors?
Well, I think one, just with the savings, I would say again, start. You just got to start somewhere. For some of you that are already participating, that's awesome. For some of you that are watching this and are like, I got to start retiring. You need to do it. You need to start. So a couple key things, and I mentioned this in the retirement video, but Social Security is not guaranteed, and it's not going to be the replacement for your income in retirement. It'll be nice. It might be a supplement, but it's not going to be a replacement of your income. So you have to save. For some that are said, I'm not going to worry about retirement. My kids will take care of me. That's really not. You don't want to be in that place. I don't want to be in a place where my kids are like, oh, I'm taking care of my own kids, but now I'm going to take care of my parents. And I understand there's some situations where that happens, but if we plan accordingly, if we plan for that retirement, we aren't going to be a burden to our family. Right. There's such great tax advantages by using retirement as far as tax deferred benefit. If you put money in retirement, those funds come in tax deferred, and then you have your whole lifetime while they grow that you don't have to pay taxes on them until they start coming out. So that's a great benefit for you. And then the last one is compounding interest. We talk about it. Sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle. Like, well, I hear compounding interest, but what does that really mean? Well, you have two individuals. One individual at age 25 puts $5,000 a year into an account, and after 10 years stops putting anything in it. And then the other individual starts putting $5,000 a year at age 35 and continues for, I think, the next 30 years. And when you see on that illustration, the person that started early, their balance is higher because of compounding interest. So again, compounding interest is your best friend. They say that, and I quoted this before, Ben Franklin's quote of, money makes money, and the money that money makes money. And so it's a great concept, and by starting early, you get the benefit of that.
Yeah. Maybe someone's watching and they're stepping into their first role, and for them it could just be, hey, I'm going to start with something. And I know some churches will have some sort of a matching fund. I think you even mentioned it in one of your videos. Talk about that for a moment, because I think that's something that maybe some don't know about.
Sure.
Why don't you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, so you may go to a church and they talk about their retirement plan, and you're thinking, I've got a lot of expenses. I'm not going to jump into the retirement plan right away. And maybe the HR person or the lead pastor says, well, by the way, we've got a match. And you may just say, that's nice. What you're doing when you don't take advantage of that is they're literally putting money on the table to give you. And if by not signing up and starting the retirement, you're just knocking it off the table and say, I don't need it. And so if a match is available, take advantage of it. I met with someone in the last couple of years that she worked for a church that had a match. She thought she had signed up for the retirement plan, but had apparently not followed through with it. When she finally left and she went to check on her retirement, she found out she had never signed up for it.
Wow.
So not only did she miss out on some of the retirement she thought she had coming for what she thought she put in, but all those years of matching, she missed out on. And so don't take it for granted. If, find out if you get to a church and you want to talk to them about the retirement and you hear the word match, say, I'm in, sign me up, tell me how to do it.
Yeah, and it can almost be more worthwhile to say, hey, I'm going to do that instead of get a little bit more right now so I can go to Chick-fil-A and Chipotle. You'd eat a whole lot more Chick-fil-A or Chipotle with your grandkids one day.
Absolutely.
If you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more rigid and disciplined right now. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about debt. Things are expensive right now, whether it's school or various things that we just have as people right now. Things are expensive. A lot of people that would be watching probably have some debt. What would you encourage that person who's watching that's maybe looking to eliminate or reduce the debt that they currently have?
I think, to say you shouldn't have debt, that's kind of like pie in the sky. It's like, oh, you shouldn't have debt. Well, the reality of it is, for all of us, we're in a world where there's typically going to have debt. I think it's how you manage that debt. It's what you do with it. How do you handle that? For instance, if a majority of your debt is credit cards, then that is a problem, because what you're doing is you're putting a lot of your bills and expenses on credit cards that have a really high interest rate. So your payback is much more than it should be. So maybe to eliminate, look at like for instance, if the cards are an issue, maybe you take the cards out and cut them up and say, okay, we're going to figure this out without credit cards. Or maybe you just keep one. Or maybe you use a debit card instead of a credit card, where the debit card, if the money's in the bank, good. If it's not, we can't use it. So, but then figure out which one of these cards or what debt has the highest interest rate, and then start to chip away at that. Say, okay, I'm going to tackle this one first. Let's get rid of that one because that's costing me the most money. So make sure you eliminate that debt, and then look for the next one you can eliminate. And it's a slow process. You're not going to turn it around in a matter of months. Sometimes it takes years, but you have to be committed. Say, okay, I'm not going to let the debt get any higher. How do I start eliminating it? And what are some of the things I can do? Even when I get it figured out and I get back in line, put up the guardrails and say, I'm not going to go outside of this area. This is my comfort zone. If I go outside of it, put me back in that hole again. So work to get out of it. Once you get out of it, put some guidelines in place.
Yeah, I love that. And in one of your episodes, you mentioned something just there about slow. You mentioned something in one of your episodes, slow and steady wins the race. We hear that a lot in various things, but when it comes to our finances, what does that look like? Why is that important?
I think you have to be careful when you pick the investments you want to jump into. I think some are probably more riskier than others. You have things like crypto that certainly has a risk factor to it. Some people may be fine with that. Others may feel like that's too much risk. Other things that have a risk to it, depending on someone's risk tolerance. That's where they've got to decide what they want to jump into. But again, it's being slow and steady. Follow your conscience to the point of, this is what I've set up to do. I'm going to try to stay on that trajectory.
Don, how can we assess where we're at when it comes to our finances?
I think the first thing we have to ask ourselves, are we assessing it for our personal being, or as far as is it an assessment to say, okay, how am I doing? Or are we assessing it because we're doing a comparison to the pastor friend or the neighbor or someone else we know? Like, how are they doing, and how do I compare to them? So I think when it comes to our financial assessment, it should never be about someone else's success and what they're doing or their financial position. It's always got to be about your own assessment as the goals you set for yourself. Like, where do I want to be? When I think about retirement, we should have an idea to say, when I get to be a certain age, this is what I'd like to have in retirement. Then as you do a financial assessment, you're like, how am I doing? Am I getting close to that goal? We talked about in savings. When we talked about savings, we talked about having an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months for any emergency expense that might come up. Well, how am I doing with that? Do I have that 3 to 6 months? If I do that, can I build on that? So it's not a matter of my financial assessment is, oh, my house is bigger than what it was when I first got married. Okay, that's great, but is that part of your financial success? And again, so your financial success is about you and the goals you've set for yourself. That's really the only thing you should be doing to evaluate how successful you are.
You're a husband, you're a dad, you're a grandfather. When it comes to legacy, long term, what would you encourage someone who's watching to maybe give them a thought to consider when it comes to their legacy one day?
Sure. Well, I appreciate that question, Steve. I think back to my dad and my parents and the legacy they gave me and they taught me. And I think one of those things was learning how to be faithful with what God has given and to be, I remember early on in life, my mom and dad would send me out to work outside, and I may have made $5 or $10, and they paid me and they said, don't forget to tithe on that. And I'm like, okay. And so it was just something that early on I learned. And so now, as I then had children and I tried to encourage that, I wanted to help them as far as a legacy. I think more than anything, being charitable and learning to just give and have a heart for giving. A few years ago, before Christmas time, we got our kids together. It was right after Thanksgiving. And we said to the kids, we want to do something different this year. So we gave them some money that we would have probably used towards some of their Christmas gifts. And we said, we want to do something different. We want you to take those funds and we want you to find people you want to give and bless this Christmas season. And then before we open gifts on Christmas Day, we want to hear the stories and what that meant to you. That Christmas was probably one of the best Christmas we've ever had, Steve, because hearing our kids talk about the blessing they got because they blessed someone else.
Yeah.
But then hearing, I believe it was my daughter-in-law said, you'll never have to do that again for us because now we recognize the blessing of giving. And so that's all part of the legacy, our legacy and how we manage our finances, our legacy and how we show our children and our kids what that looks like, and as we live that out in front of them, I think that's important that they see that.
Talk with me a little bit about what it looks like when it comes to our generosity above and beyond our tithe.
Sure. We when I have the opportunity to go out and speak sometimes to seniors groups or groups that are talking about generosity and legacy, I often provide what we call a generosity roadmap. And it's kind of, I took that, another church had let me use it. They had developed it kind of early on in helping people with just their beginning of their giving. And it helped them realize that just start giving and then get to a point where they're tithing. And then after tithing, it becomes missions giving. And then it then becomes that extra giving, that over and above, beyond giving, above tithing, above your missions and things like that. It's just being generous. And so I talk about that, and I talk about how there's those individuals that have the opportunity and the ability to do it. Others maybe can't be as generous. But then I also talk about in your planning as you get older in life, how do you plan and make sure that you can be generous as you're living today, or you can be generous in your as you've passed because of things you put in place, such as charitable trust or things like that, so that you've then taken the initial steps to say, I want to bless ministry even after I'm gone. I want to leave a legacy even after I'm gone. So, being generous is more than just writing a check. It's learning how to use your assets. Some people have a lot of assets that they don't even realize they can use that to be generous to ministry. So I just love the fact that when I have the opportunity to work with donors who are so generous and so charitable, and you get to just see the heart they have and how they want to bless ministry. And so when you see that, when you get to work with people like that, it's a real blessing.
Well, that is a powerful story, and no doubt one that I'm sure your kids will never forget.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some that even watching, they're like, wow, that's awesome. I want to consider doing that this holiday season.
It was very special.
Yeah.
It was a pretty special time for us.
That's awesome. Rapid fire questions. Let's have some fun ones here.
All right.
What was the first job you ever had?
First summer job I ever had was working at a utility gas company, and I was painting, and I painted all their buildings. And it was a lot of fun. It was it was a lot of hard work, but that was it. It helped pay the college bill, that's for sure.
Yeah. Favorite hobby?
Favorite hobby, I'd have to say now, is hunting. I really have grown to love hunting, and sports would come in second, but I really enjoy hunting.
Favorite spot to hunt?
Colorado.
Colorado. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned you have some grandkids. How many grandkids do you have?
I have 4 grandkids, and they are just the joy of our lives. I have 3 boys and 1 girl, and they just, I can't say enough. Spending time with them is just a real joy.
Favorite thing to do with them?
Well, one of my favorite things is one of them's the 3-year-old is about to have a birthday, and my daughter asked if we can take him on a hayride. So I'm taking my grandkids on a hayride, and that's a lot of fun to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you called Grandpa and your wife called Grandma, or what are the names that you guys have?
No, I'm actually called Pap.
Okay.
And it's an honor because my dad and my grandfather was called Pap, and my kids asked if they could call me Pap, which was, wow, what that meant so much to me. And my wife's name is Kiki, K-I-K-I, Kiki. And I love hearing my grandkids call her Kiki, and they love Kiki.
That is fun.
Yeah.
You mentioned another one of your favorite hobbies, sports.
Yes.
Favorite sport to watch?
Hockey or football. They both.
Who are your teams?
So the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I know I'm in a tough area now, but I remain true to all my Pittsburgh teams.
I love it. I love it. Well, Don, thank you for being a part of this.
Absolutely.
For investing in so many. I know that this will be a resource in videos that are an encouragement and a blessing to our ministers. And so thanks for investing. If there's anybody that's watching that would say, hey, I want to know a little bit more about some of this when it comes to financial health, where can they find out more information?
Sure. Just reach out to us at AG Financial. We have a website, so you can reach out to us there. We would have our phone number on the website. So reach out to us, whether it involves retirement. We have retirement consultants that travel and come meet with you, whether it has to do with planned giving. We're happy to talk to you about that. Insurance, church lending. We cover a whole gamut of resources for the local church, and we would love to help you out in any way we can.
Awesome. Well, Don, thank you so much for being here. And for everybody that's tuning in, make sure to check out the other videos that are part of this Healthy Pastors resource. We'll see you on the next video.